Okay, I know we've talked about perfectionism on this podcast before, but we truly cannot talk about it enough because it is by far one of the biggest things I see holding people back from being successful in their elopement photography businesses. So today we're bringing it up again and we're talking about it in a few different analogies that range from nuclear weapons and engineering all the way to chicken coops. I want this podcast to help you see why perfectionism is keeping you stuck and why letting things be quote unquote good enough is often the thing that actually leads to success. Welcome to Stoked, the podcast that helps adventure elopement photographers hit six figures and beyond in their businesses without hustling on social media. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become an elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on helping you do the same. Are you ready to start booking out your calendar with dream couples in breathtaking locations and feeling genuinely stoked about your elopement photography business, life, and bank account? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail.
And your co-host, Todd Reedy.
And today's episode is all about perfectionism, which we've talked about before, but we're going to talk about it in a different way today. And Todd's going to kind of share some of his insight on it as, I wouldn't even say a recovering perfectionist, as a
long-time perfectionist.
Long-time perfectionist that is kind of trying to work his way out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, are you still a perfectionist? I know I verbalize my angst about it probably more than you do. So where do you stand on the recovering still?
Yeah, I don't think I am anymore just because I've done so many imperfect things and have seen positive results from it, just like taking actions and stuff. I think where I get hung up is if I have a lot of different options on actions I can take, I'm not going to try to do any of them perfectly, but I might just be like, well, I could send an email, or should I run an ad, or should I do this? That's where I get kind of hung up, is just with the options, but not with making anything perfect. All my stuff is not perfect at all.
But it may look that way.
Yeah, people think I have my shit together and I just don't.
Yeah. My first example as we kick this off, if you were to say, oh, I wonder what Megan and Todd's office or studio looks like, it's a shit show right now, guys.
Yeah.
We're literally recording this on a folding table from Costco that I used yesterday to build a chicken coop. Has paint, has stain, has coffee rings.
Yep.
I got tools. So this is our quote unquote office.
Yeah, and I have a chicken sitting on my lap.
Yeah.
So there might be chicken poop in here in a second. We'll see.
So yeah, everything that we do is definitely not perfect. So that's where we'll start for today. So the reason that I wanted to do this episode again is we often hear from students, like our colleagues, our friends, us, me. We want to be perfect, and we get hung up and we agonize over things being better than they are. And the example that came to mind was I was chopping some vegetables to feed as snacks to our chickens today.
Yeah.
And I literally was chopping them so precisely and realized, what the fuck am I doing? They're just going to get eaten by chickens out of the dirt.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. And so somehow I got from there to back in my old career. So I was an engineer. I worked at a national laboratory and I did stuff on nuclear weapons. And so as a whole, if you can think of any type of job, that should have been a super precise, high rigor. And so that term is kind of weird, I guess. Megan hadn't heard it used before, but we use it a lot in engineering. So if something is high rigor, it's demands to be perfect, well thought out, and yeah, perfect.
And precise.
Precise, yeah. So thinking about that in regards to our business and our lives, there are certain things that should be done with high rigor, but not everything. There's definitely not enough time in the day, enough energy in your tank to do everything perfectly within your life and within your business, right? So we're all juggling family life, house lives, our businesses, who knows whatever the hell else we're trying to handle. There's just no way to do everything perfectly. So back to my engineering analogy. So there were aspects of that were low rigor. I'm thinking notes from meetings or like emails between colleagues, just like kind of sharing information, but nothing that had to be perfect and fully thought out and documented. But on the flip side of that, there were aspects that had to be the highest rigor. I'm thinking like blueprints, assembly instructions, like serial numbers, anything that's going to be archived as data for our nuclear weapons, like has to be perfect. Just had to be ironclad. It had to be checked, double checked, had to be, signed off by managers, signed off by, they called them graybeards, like the people that have been at the labs for like decades. Anyway, so like literally had to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So this huge spectrum and like anywhere in between of your day-to-day work could fall within there. Now, relating that to our elopement photography business, lives are not at stake, most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, we are like being adventurous and like standing on cliff edges and, whatever. But for the vast majority of this work, it doesn't need to be high rigor, doesn't need to be surgery grade, doesn't need to be weapon grade. It's photography.
Yeah.
So taking a step back, I know we all like really want our jobs and we want what we do to be important and to be of high class, which I think it can be, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just like saying over and over again the same thing, but maybe with a different spin.
Yeah. No, I think that has brought up an important part because you're talking about how, within your old career, there were things that needed to be high rigor and then there are things that were low rigor. But like, how do you switch back and forth between those things when you're just running your brain on perfectionism all the time? And you can't really. And that's why maybe you're cutting chicken vegetables up so perfectly. And like with the chicken coop, you've wanted it to be perfect and you're like beating yourself up over things that aren't perfect. And I'm like, it's literally a chicken coop. Like, I just need a roof over their heads, So yeah, like turning it on and off. But then also, when we were talking about this before the episode, I brought up the fact that like, I don't think anything in a photography business is high rigor. Everything's so subjective and nothing has to be perfect. And the biggest thing that we see holding people back in their business is perfectionism. Like everyone that signs up for the Elopement Photographer Mastermind gets a mug from me that says F perfection because we see it hold people back so much and take way too much time when your actions in your business, like when it accumulates and you keep taking action, you keep publishing blogs and doing sales calls and, all the things that you need to do to market your business. When you get enough reps in, that's when you see the momentum build and the bookings come in and all that kind of stuff. So if you're like stalling out and procrastinating and paralyzed because you're so anxious about everything being perfect before you release it out into the world, those people they either never become successful until we beat the perfectionism out of them, or it takes them a really long time, because they're just paralyzed
and caught up. Yeah.
And agonizing over things being perfect.
And like, I'm trying to think now of on any given day as an elopement photographer, right? You're probably doing social media, you're probably doing, consult calls, you're sending emails. All of those things should be done with high quality, with professionalism. But if you like have a typo in an email, like, and you find it later, it's going to be okay. Or editing a gallery, right? So like I'm envisioning a lot of people get hung up on like making their galleries perfect, right? Going in, masking every image or like deleting stray hairs, all that stuff. In the moment, you may be fretting about it, but can you remember like 3 galleries back what wasn't perfect or like which image wasn't your favorite? I don't know. Like again, like
perfectionism it's not an attainable goal.
Right.
So if you're striving for perfection, you're never going to get there and you're just going to be hard on yourself the whole time and be like, sending off another imperfect gallery because I'm so freaking stressed and I'm at the deadline or something. It's just unattainable too.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
Yeah. Well, I think you need to you got to rewrite the script in your head because I think, a lot of women especially are big perfectionists, I think, because school trained us to be that way. Like there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And if you get it wrong, then you're screwed. There's shame involved with that. And I think also we've kind of connected our self-worth to being perfect. And then we're also afraid of being criticized. So if we like send out a gallery or post on social media or write a blog post, what if somebody sees it and thinks poorly of us, So perfectionism is trying to like save us in that regard. But like the people who want to find things wrong with us are always going to find things wrong with us no matter what. And most people aren't
looking for the negative
Yeah.
or the imperfections in our work. And yeah.
Yeah. And I also think as I get more into this kind of stuff, it's your nervous system trying to protect you. Like imperfection is like danger, And so your nervous system is like, I'm not letting you do this because, you're going to be criticized or you're going to be unworthy or your clients aren't going to be happy or you're not going to make any money, like all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a protective mechanism. But when in reality, it's not doing you any favors because your goal is to have a successful business. And if you're stalling out and agonizing over stuff and treating everything like it's high rigor when it's low rigor, yeah, you're just not going to get to that success.
Yeah. And as you were talking, it like made me think back to this chicken coop. And a little side note here, Megan and I were joking the other night about how hopefully this elopement photography podcast doesn't turn into a pure chicken podcast, but it's a perfect example for something that's in our life that's, I don't know, I was taking a lot of pride in this chicken coop that I was building. And I think, I know social media is killing me. Even though I don't post on there, I have a personal account, I don't post on it. I have a business account, I rarely post or do anything on it, right? But in my head, anything that we have at our house or like in our life, I think could go on social media, right? And so in that vein, I like want everything to be perfect, which is absolutely ridiculous, right? Yeah. To think that if you were to say like photograph or take a video of the chicken coop, nobody cares what my angles look like or how like tight my joints are. Like no one's going to look that closely. And also no one gives a shit.
Yeah. No one gives a shit. I just see it as an awesome, amazing chicken coop. I'm sure if I looked really closely, I'd see some imperfections, but I don't even know what you're talking about when you talk about joints.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no one cares. And like when it comes to like photos, right? So like seeing other people's work, I'd like to think that we and like the general population, our clients, our potential couples, our students' couples, they're looking for the beauty in those photos, right? The emotion of it, the grandiose landscapes, like not the imperfections of like the lint on the dude's jacket.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't think anyone is giving that much attention to any of this stuff.
Yeah.
That we're all driving ourselves crazy, trying for everything that we do to be perfect and high rigor.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I see as a coach, like I just see people spending months getting their website done. We can't start getting you inquiries and bookings until your website's done, or spending months getting some styled shoots done that you need to get done, or spending way too many hours editing when you have blog posts you need to write, or not writing blog posts because you don't know what to write about, even though I tell people what to write about. Like I just see people dragging their feet all the time. And as a coach, it can be frustrating, but I also know that there's lessons being learned during that time. And I want people to think of it as like, you weren't born being a perfect photographer or knowing how to blog or knowing how to market yourself or knowing how to do sales calls or knowing how to edit or any of that stuff, right? So you're starting from nothing and you probably have really good taste and you want things to be a certain level of stuff, but you also need to get your reps in. What do you think is going to get you more results? Going to the gym and doing one perfect workout created by a personal trainer, or doing 20 half-assed workouts where you're just like throwing weights around or something? Like when I got in really good shape back in 2020, I was doing some half-assed workouts. Like I was doing yoga by myself in my apartment after a couple hard seltzers, like I was very much half-assing it and I got in really good shape. And I want you to kind of think of that when you're starting a new skill, which a lot of business stuff is. It's just new skills. Photography is a new skill, planning styled shoots, all that stuff. So you really need to get your reps in, and you have to do things imperfectly kind of over and over and over again. And then eventually you'll see results and you won't care about perfection anymore because you've kind of healed that part of yourself that thinks that your success is tied to that. And you'll see that your success is tied to taking actions and building momentum and not being paralyzed and kind of like jumping off the cliff and building your parachute on the way down. Like it's that kind of stuff that rewards success in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is basically like the antithesis of everything you learned in school.
Yeah, and it's like the master class of trial and error.
And that's why so many people don't become successful entrepreneurs. You know, even if they have a good following on Instagram or whatever, like the things that make you a successful elopement photographer are likely things that you aren't obsessing over, and the things that you are obsessing over don't matter. And we've been trained from a young age to sit quietly in a room by ourselves, study for tests, take the test. There's only one right or wrong answer. You know, your whole worth is based on the grade, and then you go into your job, and like if you have a high rigor job like Todd, then you apply that to your whole life. And if you have, I mean, I was a surgeon for a period of time, but even that like has some leeway.
Yeah, in certain things, like probably some aspects of surgery are low rigor and other aspects are high rigor, right?
Yeah, there's some parts where it's like, oh my God, you have to be really precise and you're like sweating your ass off. Like, oh my God, I can't mess this up. And then other parts you can be kind of loosey-goosey with and it doesn't really affect the outcome. But yeah, I really, really, really want to, you know, when Todd brought up this podcast idea, I wanted to use it to really encourage people to just take action over and over and over again, even if it's B, C, or D grade work. Put the reps in, do the half-assed gym workouts, you know, like do not hold on to perfection. If you do, you will not be successful, period. Entrepreneurship does not reward perfectionism. In fact, perfectionism will stall out your success and it'll have you quitting before you even get close, you know? So embrace the B, C grade work, the low rigor. But yeah, is that kind of like when you came up with this idea, is that kind of what you wanted to get across to people?
Yeah, that everything doesn't have to be perfect. There are aspects of your business that can have imperfections in them, and you'll be just fine. You'll be way happier. You'll probably be more successful. You'll have more time on your hands to do your life than trying to make everything perfect.
Yeah, think of it as that way too. Like you're going to be a happier person if you're not chasing perfectionism. So like you really need to work on being happy with your imperfections. And honestly, like I'd rather, especially when it comes to social media, like I want to see people's quirks and weird stuff and imperfections way more than a perfectly polished professional stuff. So that's like we need to break out of our professional identities as well, especially if you're like currently working a 9 to 5 or recently worked a 9 to 5. Like our schooling and our professions basically make us these robots.
Yeah.
And you got to throw all that out the window if you want to be a successful small business owner and entrepreneur. So start working on those things. These are lessons that you have to learn. Like if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, nah, I'm still going to try to be perfect on stuff. You have to learn the lesson that you can't do that and be successful.
And there's probably going to be seasons of when your perfectionism creeps back up and you kind of have to check yourself on the level of imperfections that you can live with.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's just like abundance mindsets, growth mindsets, all that kind of stuff. Like your brain is going to want to sneak back into scarcity and all those things that it finds safe, even though it's really not in your best interest as an entrepreneur. So yeah, you have to constantly, self-awareness is always the first step. So you have to be aware that your brain is trying to pull you back in to these things. And then, yeah, rewire from there, whether through affirmations or actions or
therapy.
Yes, we don't talk enough about how therapy has really helped some of our students overcome some of these blocks that has prevented them from being successful, and then therapy helped them be successful. So knowledge isn't always the key to being successful. Perfectionism is definitely not the key to being successful. Improving yourself, learning lessons, taking action, those things are the keys to success, and like maybe some therapy thrown in if you need it. Cool. Well, that was fun. Well, thanks for taking the lead on this podcast, Todd, and sharing some of your stories. And I think a lot of business stuff could also be related to chicken coop building. So yeah, hopefully you found this helpful. And I think it's always a good reminder for us to come on the podcast and tell you to not be perfect. Talk to you next week. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of Stoked. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring elopement photography content, check us out on Instagram at Megan McPhail. And if you'd like to hear more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you hit six figures as an elopement photographer, then check out my website at www.meganmcphail.com.